It's Friday. I hope everybody's been having a great time at the conference. My name is Cindy Brocker. I'm the NCECA Communications Director. And it is my pleasure to introduce this panel and the moderator of the panel, Mike Rand, who I have actually known since I was short and couldn't talk. So if you can imagine that. I think maybe there might have been a time where he was taller than I am by an inch, but that's about it.
She's trying to make me feel better.
So I hope you really enjoy this session. You're not here to listen to me talk, you're here to listen to them talk, so I'm going to get out of the way.
And I have, since I've known Cindy a very long time, I know you're all kind of family here, I have something for you, Cindy. This found its way into my kiln. It needs to go home with you.
Should I open it right now?
You need to open it in front of everybody.
Is something going to jump out at me?
Nothing's jumping out at you. It needs to go home to its big brothers and sisters. It's not a sander.
It's very well packed. Thank you very much.
It is Coney the spider.
It's a spider.
So, I know you love spiders so much.
Well,
hint,
yes.
nudge, nudge, no.
Also, my dad used to make spider sculptures, Mike knows that because he's been to my house for a long time.
Okay, darling, thank you.
Thank you so much. I will let you get to your presentation.
Okay.
Thank you for indulging us. Enjoy the presentation. I will get out of your way now.
Okay, thank you for coming, guys. This is Professional Packing and Creating for Artists. My name is Mike Rand, and she said I've been in fine arts handling for about 8 years now. I was originally trained by the gentleman who actually trained Noah next to me, who I'll get to in a second, in the Aspen area, who is from Denver Art Museum. I now have my own company called Hanging Lake Fine Art, and we service the Aspen and Vail corridors for any fine arts handling needs. Today, hopefully, all of you guys can take a few different concepts away of how to better pack your work in professional ways. In the last 2 years, I have gone to many, many exhibitions after restarting a career in clay, and I've got a lot of comments from a lot of art directors, gallery owners, gallery directors about the need for better packing, just not in clay, but all forms of art. To my left here, I'm going to introduce everybody here because we're just going to kind of flow, and we're going to flow because the way Noah and me are, so we don't step on each other's toes. I will have some things you might feel, oh, he jumped a major step in teaching us another technique. Noah will probably be covering that technique in it with a different type of form of art. So don't feel bad if you think, oh, there's a major jump. It's kind of how we designed it. And then Noah's been at the workshop, which is Workshop Fine Art out of New York City for a while now. He's been doing art handling for over 10 years, 7 years install in the New York City area. He drove art all over the place. He now makes a lot of fine arts crates, which you'll see more of him doing the fine arts crating, what he and I get paid to do, where you'll see how I use the techniques for ceramic art specifically. And then on the end we have Miss Jill Foote-Hutton from Red Lodge originally, and she has been a gallery director for many years. She has dealt with all the pieces getting shipped into her, packed well, packed bad, packed horribly, and everything in between, and she's going to discuss her experiences as a gallery director, what you don't see behind the scenes, and a lot of what she has to deal with. She is currently now with Whistle Pig Studios, and she gets people involved with clay and art through storytelling and monsters. So it's pretty good. So I think we're in line with this. So let's get going. So here we are. This is a kind of museum standard crate you can see as the main entry. This was in the Box Pot show last year, juried by Mr. Garth Johnson. And this is how we kind of packed full museum style whiteboarding, and you don't have to go all this way. It's a cost. I do it without some of the finishing. So let's get going. As professional artists or student artists, we all work tirelessly to create our work and care deeply for our art, and we look for others to care for art. That's the big one. We have to look for others to care for art, and that is my 2.5-year-old. The first day she was in the studio sculpting a plate, and she cherishes her first plate like you don't want to know. We all do. There is a major unwritten rule. If there's only one thing you remember today is this. This is something that we've all talked about up here behind the scenes. The better the work of art is packed, the better a work of art is cared for in its entire life. It's like our children. We send them out in the world. You do not have control once you send it to the gallery, the collector, or the museum. But, big but, you never know who's going to deliver your packaged art, right? I mean, we see all the videos on YouTube, and sometimes it's this guy. Yeah, I mean, this is what we've resorted to getting across the oceans. And he tries good. The Hulk just smashes, but he does a little better. But you never know. Or how your package will be handled once at their final destination. And this is a serious thing. It isn't just at the gallery, at the museum. It is all the steps between all the people who touch it. There are countless people who touch your heart or come in contact with the box between you saying, here's my piece at the UPS store, or to your friend who's going to deliver it to the gallery. And this is a main terminal. This is not a joke. It doesn't look real, I know, but this is why they say we can't guarantee orientational directional shipping. And you can see Patrick Starr just got a new job, and he's happy. He's excited, and we know Patrick only works for Krabby Patty, so be careful. You never know. I know there's Rambo there, too, and a couple other memes. But this is how things are handled in these bulk centers. So kind of keep that in the back of your head. I'm going to go over some basic things here. Now, I have this online through the NCECA. They have the resource. Candace on the administrative staff has this. If not, come up, get my business card, give me your email. I can email you the summary of everything afterwards later. So you guys, if you want a hard copy or a PDF of it, you can have it. These are 5 basic concepts I put together for you all to think about. The first one is what type of vibrations my artwork are going to encounter during shipping. This is a big one. This is what damages our work, is vibrations and impact. What material is my art made from? Us ceramic artists deal with certain aspects of our art that painters don't deal with. They have to be shipped and packaged differently. How to uniform the shape, which is an important way of packing to think about, of the art of the inner box. That's literally where you stabilize your piece. You initially pack it. Maybe it has vibration dampening, maybe it isn't. You're going to do the vibration dampening between the inner and outer boxes. What is the appropriate packing material to use? Like I said, different arts made of different materials take different types of packing material. I'm going to show you how I do it with very minimal high-end archival materials. Noah will show you what we do when we use the real high-end archival materials, which do cost a lot, but you can do it. It's up to how much you care about your work. And, of course, what method of shipping are you using? Are you going to use Uncle Buck? Or are you going to drive it there yourself, or are you going to pay somebody like FedEx to take it for you? Vibration dampening. There are 2 primary vibration types that will damage your work. The first one is small repetition vibration, as you can tell. I mean, most of you understand this. It's walking your piece in the gallery, bumping your shoulder in the door. It's all the driving down the road, all the little vibrations. There's certain materials we use to dampen those vibrations from causing fracture through things vibrating or wearing, tearing out, or rubbing. We also have high impact vibrations, or for you people involved in physics, high velocity deacceleration. It isn't the fall that kills you off the cliff. It is the sudden stop on the ground, right? This is when a piece, like you can read, it's the cargo truck, the pallet, one pallet coming free, slamming into the pallet that your work has been put on. It could be dropped. UPS says 14 1-foot drops, 1 6-foot drop per shipment. That's one way. You have to guarantee that your piece can survive that for their insurance. This comes direct from a UPS manager. And that's because of all the conveyor belt drops from conveyor belt to conveyor belt, or falling off the truck, which I've seen directly from galleries I pack for. Guy picks them up and half the stack falls over. Happens every day. What materials not to use? Now I'm going to kind of go into this. I'm a bit of a stickler because I come from the fine arts industry. I understand there's budgets. I'm budgeted too to ship my own work, but kind of keep in mind to try to get away from these as best as possible. Styrofoam peanuts, you know, really they're a mess to work with. We all know that. They can get into things. They can be damaged pieces that people are trying to pull things apart, pull peanuts out of pieces that wedge themselves into pieces. They're environmentally damaged. I understand. Jill will go into a way to how to use them well. Used, beat up, taped up bubble wrap. It's just very unprofessional. If you need to use it, clean it up, retap it into like wads, boulders, or rolls. Use it as a void filler, not as the main primary vibration dampener, because half those bubbles are probably already damaged and are not going to do their job. Heavy-duty used boxes. Mainly, they don't meet insurance standards, literally, and they professionally look bad. And this is part of your advertising and packaging too, is how you package. It's the first thing, you know, Jill brought this up and she will again. First thing your people see of your work is your name on a box, not your work. This is how we pack. This is foam. 2 types of primary foam that we use for archival packing. Polyurethane or open cell foam is a sponge. Ideally, you want 1.4 pound weight density. This is on that sheet, so it's online, or come and see me afterwards. And this is used for all the small vibrations. Sometimes this is all we use. You can get it 1/2 inch, 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch thicknesses. You can buy it in big sheets at warehouses. Any major city has a distributor over there that sells to the public at wholesale costs. Polyethylene, which we call in the industry EFA-foam. So if you're ever talking to somebody, say, oh, I put EFA-foam in it. This is what's used in a lot of TVs, the big flat screens, because styrofoam doesn't work for these really thin devices. This stuff is for the high impact when something slams hard and it needs to rebound. This is the stuff that's in life jackets. So it's another way you can also structurally build with it. You'll see in a moment. Okay, moving on, as I said very fast here. I'm going to start simply, and we're going to jump up to more complex forms. And I come from a potter's tradition. It's a platter, and this is how I would pack a platter for you guys. I had to whip this up and do this for you guys, so it took me about 35 minutes in my shop, but you guys can do the exact same if you just get the right supplies. So I built a pizza box, as I call it. And I just did it out of scraps. It's a little smaller than I wanted, but you go to Uline or Tharco and order boxes in bulk. You can get this exact style box, exactly size. If you're a potter, you're shipping large flat items, you can get exactly what you want in bulk discount very cheaply. There is the bubble lining for it. I use small bubble primarily because with paintings I wrap, I don't use big bubble as much because they press in the surfaces sometimes. Small bubble, big bubble, and combo is a great way to go about it. Put small bubble down first, big bubble second, because if you lose a big bubble, you have a big gap in your packaging that can lead to a piece getting hit. I then primarily wrap with soft foam. This is non-abrasive foam, same type of foam as the F foam. This is what you buy at Lowe's. You can buy this in small discount pieces, or you can buy it in big rolls like I do. It just depends on what you want to pay. Also use different colored tape, and there's reasons for that, and I'm going to leave that to one of my cohorts up here in a little bit. I just simply wrap it because the people will cut the tape, they'll retape where the tape was because they see where it was. They also know where to pull away. Pack it in the box, a little more bubble to fill the void, sealed up, dashed line to mark where to cut it. Now, I got a whole set of plates here ready to go. They go in one bigger box. It's called portfolio packing. They're all in an internal box. They go in one bigger box, and then that bigger box goes in a larger outer box with 2 inches minimum around it. So this is the way you can portfolio pack. And if you travel around the country selling at fairs, you can pack all your pieces like this, have them labeled, and just hand them to clients out the door, bam. You know they're going to be taken care of, and they're going to be happy when they get their platter home to serve on. Okay, we jumped a little bit here, but packing of a complex form. This is my heavy iron body clay with porcelain, and those are razor sharp. So they're hyper delicate. Some of you might have recognized this from the Inferno show that was at Baltimore Clay Works about 1.5 years ago. This is how I packed a piece and drove it across country. I started by first figuring out how to engineer a system to make this structure sit stable without having those spikes get rubbed or bumped. Sometimes your best packing material is empty space. So I created a wedge out of the F foam. Like I said, you can use it structurally. You can see me test fitting. This is the most dangerous part for your art, is getting the test fitting happening, because you have to move the art from time to time. And here you go. Here is it locked, test fitted into its brackets. So it's locked into place, a bit of blue foam underneath for vibration dampening. Here is the examples of both ends of the locking brackets. One is permanently put down so if someone can't remove it and confuse it with the other one is there. But you can notice I did not completely compress it down. There's a thing called a Goldilocks factor. You need to figure out what's best for your work. It's snug, not too loose, not too tight. It's just right. And this is something we can't teach. You have to figure with your own art. It's one of those things, teaching on the wheel. It's tough to teach somebody pressure control. Same principle. Here it's the open box. I've hot glued this unit into the box so it cannot be taken out or fall out, or if it gets tipped, it kind of holds upside down. Here's the piece loaded in. The box, here's the crate it goes into. I had a little bit stiffer foam when I initially bought, so I had a little less foam than I normally would do, but that's something you have to judge for your own pieces and weight. And compression is what you test. Here's the box going in, proper labeling how to open. The name, my name, the title of the piece, what it is, the material. This is how Noah and I do it. It's every piece on the inside wrapping is this way. People know what they're handling in the inner box. I have now moved to doing like this, much cleaner, much more professional, is printing it off on my computer and either varnishing it down to the top of the crate or just taping it to the inner box. You can do this on your lap computers, and proper labeling of the crate with a proper corner. And that's very important for if you make crates or even custom boxes, the way the lid has to fit in a certain way. Mark your corners so people know, because if they put it the other way, it might damage the work. Or they're going to be drilling, trying to screw in and ripping out the side walls of your crates. Packing in straight into a crate. This is another method we do. You're going to see more from Noah on this. But this is another major technique. Now this piece was at the Earth Moves exhibition, and it kind of floats on this backboard that has canvas that can't mars from the paint level, and it's very, very touchy paint. And I didn't have archival Tyvek at the time, so I had to use the stuff from Lowe's. I didn't have an LLC, so I couldn't buy it in bulk. It was part of the reason. And this is how I built the crate for it. It lowers straight in. I used a non-abrasive 1/8-inch white foam. I hot glued it into place with a crafts gun, not a primary industrial heavy-duty hot glue, because it's a little too hot. And these are things, if you start building like this and packing, you will have to kind of feel what's best how things work. It's tough. We talk about this. And all the hardware's in there. So anything special for your pieces, make sure they're secured in a place. They're there. They're on your packing list. They're on your instructions. The electronical drivers and the hardware and the museum florets to hang this piece off D-rings is in there. There's a piece laying in. Now I have a problem because the piece is only mounted by 2 screw rods into the back of the piece, and it floats to let light underneath. So I had to make a wedge, as you can see here, and I wedged it under just to stop the vibration from bouncing like this and snapping the JB weld mounts in the back. And then we have the cross brackets. Now I used all just the open cell foam because I had thick pieces. I didn't need any FF foam, and I have compressed it about 1 to 2 pounds because I know how the piece is built. That's a thick chunk of clay. That was 25 solid pounds of clay stretched out. So it's thick. I need a little compression to hold it in place. Lighter piece, less compression. That's what you're going to have to judge. Here's it locked in, and yes, I had to start my business in my garage like many of us do. And then they're sealed up and other crates ready to go to, the other crates were going somewhere else, I can't remember. Okay, combining techniques. This piece has a lot of issues while shipping it. It is a 15-pound chunk of main porcelain clay body, that kind of chunk in the front, and the tentacles that are up to 24 inches long. So they vibrate really badly, and they get amplified by vibrations as you go down the road because they're so long. And this piece is fused together in the wood kiln. So I'm dipping it in the glaze and building my pieces in the wood kiln this way because it would be near impossible to bisque this and get it out of the kiln. And I don't have a big enough bisque kiln either. So this is the apparatus I built for it. And yes, I've jumped a few steps in the techniques, but you can see how to do this. I actually will mount this. As you can see, this is the kind of rough outline, finished form of this apparatus, and now you'll see how it fits in. I built this to mount opposite to the direction I built it in the kiln. That way, with those blue foam strips you can see pushing just below the tentacles, the 2 horizontal ones, they push up just where those tentacles come out, and that way I'm stabilizing the structure and not pushing weight against the glazes in case the glaze fusing isn't that strong. I've also, as you can see here going through the pictures, the little blue chunks of foam, those keep those tentacles from chattering, chipping each other, or cracking. I had a piece get damaged going to a show in Chicago 2 years ago because one of these little pieces fell out and accidents happened and it shattered a piece and chipped it. You know, this happens sometimes. It doesn't matter, UPS can run your piece over, and in galleries I've had boxes come back half the size for galleries I've shipped from. Not a joke. They crush them. They don't care. I mean, it's Patrick Starr. He doesn't understand. So you can see how it's loaded in the crate now. There's those little 4 blocks. Lock that vertical bracket in to lock the piece in. And you can see their proper labeling because it's custom cut to fit the piece, so it has to go one way. Remember, label things. Label, label. It will help people understand what you want for your work, because it's your work. You have to make sure it's protected. Sealed up. Another big technical thing is in industry for like Noah and I in the fine arts handling industries, finished washer head screws mean they're to be removed. Screws or bolts that don't have washers on them stuff or countersunk in are not to be removed. So if you get into a big museum show or something and you get it crated or you crate it yourself, screws with either finished washers or the ones with the permanent heads on them, that indicates to us or the art handlers, these are the screws to remove. Or you can draw circles around it or paint little square boxes around it. I've seen from some art handlers. So a little technique of telling people how to undo your crates, because maybe you have a crate that the sides have to fall off to get everything out, but you have to tell which screws to take apart. Okay, we're going to move to something really big, really heavy. This is a piece by Scott Ross. It's titled Embrace. It is 300 plus pounds of solid wood-fired clay. This piece went all the way to Mino, Japan for the big Mino show last year, that big whatever triannual or whatever they have. It's about 3 feet tall, 3.5 feet tall. The base is about the same, and he needed help creating this. He didn't know about FF foam. He just had been slapping them on pallets and strapping them down. Had to go to Japan, so he got a proper crate made that could go international properly for pallet jacks and forklifts. And I don't know if you can see there's little eyelets that drill straight into the foots on the bottom, the feet. And you can see how I got him to get FF foam because he needed FF foam to stop the vibrations of this thing being handled because it is so heavy. He has to load these in with gantry cranes. And here you go. Here's the base going in. We made sure certain parts were wrapped in case it got rubbed, just rubbing points. He put FF foam in the base. to stop any downward movement of that really heavy piece, and a board to stabilize it so it's uniform compression of that piece of FFoam. And this is things you can do. You don't just have to have the FFoam or the foam against your pieces. If you have a big strong base, you have bolts that come out of your piece, you can bolt it to a base and then put the FFoam. You know, I have to sometimes reverse the direction I'm doing. My daughter's piece for the K-12 show last year had to be shipped UPS. They don't like wood with UPS systems. So I put the crate on the inside and put the box on the outside. And I just had bubble wrap, rolls of bubble wrap. You can do the big bubble wrap and rolls and hot glue them into place, and they work like our foam. It's a cheap solution for you guys to pack like we pack. And it looks clean. It's obvious how you reload things. And here you go into, he wrapped the piece with a blanket, which a lot of you have probably seen this before. Now, personally, I would put a clean, clear plastic bag over it just to keep any tags. You know, the piece is very rough from ripping up the towel, and then it has to be cleaned. Traditionally, we would use archival Tyvek, which Noah will be showing you in a moment how to wrap with that. It's a type of soft pack. And the straps, and then we saran wrap. We do this in a lot of things with bronzes and things at times of wrap them, just to keep things from vibrating. And then it's strapped together. The only thing I would do other than this, and he and I saw him last week actually and stopped at the school he teaches at, is I would put 4 cross beams, 2 each direction on the top third of the piece at least, because it's so heavy that if that piece, that crate by chance gets toppled, which pallets and forklifts make mistakes a lot. I mean, they're very good at what they do, but they make mistakes. That piece could rip out of the straps because they're not made to go that direction. At least it would keep it in place. And here's a top, he had a little FFoam for top for slowing it down if it gets jacked this way because it's going on ocean freight. That's how it went. So it's a lot of upward, downward, all direction movement. And there's the outside of the crate. I think all of you now seen what I do, you probably all notice there's a few things missing on the out of the crate, right? I mean, you guys kind of notice it's not labeled well. So this is something we talk about. You need to have your arrows. Even though it's only one way to really lift this thing, you need to have other information, keep it dry, fracturable, fragile. This is how beat up this crate came back to him. I mean, it went halfway around the planet and back again. It survived. It's sitting in Kentucky right now. I saw the piece last week. So, you know, we worked on it to get it because he was hand delivering these pieces because he's the only person who could handle 350 to 400 pounds of clay. That's a lot. So kind of wrapping up here and moving on, and I'm doing well in my time, surprisingly, today. These are the top-end crates. These are what in-house museums like the Met, they all have preparatory teams, and these are dream jobs for people like me and Noah at times if we choose to go that way. I don't expect you guys to go out and make these. I've only ever made one of these. They're fully gasketed, sealed crates, and they're painted, and they're gorgeous. They're works of art. You know, I make the crates I make them for my clients. They're just lined with foam core, which you'll see in a moment from Noah. But I think all of you who are here have challenge accepted, right? I got to give it up for the young people and give them their memories. So by being here, you've just stepped 1 foot farther in front of everybody next door, everybody the door down, everybody else at this conference who's not sitting here, because you have started to show that you truly care about your work in ways to make sure it is protected out there. And all these techniques can be used in any type of work. So here's a summary real quick. This is on, I got this online, I got it on the page I can PDF to you. And engineer the packing systems first. Think about how to ship your work while making it. That helps you a lot. If you're thinking about like the little lecture the students did, the grad students did on making and installing your work, think about it. How am I going to ship this piece? Do I have to ship it the way it was fired, or can I ship it in another direction? Clean quality materials will show you professionally. I have benefited greatly. My pieces get put by desks in offices, not in storerooms, because they come in these crates that we could all party on. But they is a perceived value quotient. I'm making people realize that my pieces are worth something. They're going to be worth something. And then the other couple nice ones, mainly high quality packing, brings more respect for your work. So I thank you. I'm going to pass this on to Noah here real quick. Oh, okay.
I'm starting it over. So I primarily make very small drawings and paintings, but I come from a family of potters. So this is one of my father Walter's pieces hanging in my brother Matt's house. And although they've set me up pretty well for a career handling their work, for a career in art handling, which is over 10 years now. the last few of which has been with my friend Drew Gilmore at Workshop Fine Art in Brooklyn. And although we primarily pack and build gallery crates, we also fabricate things for gallery installations. These are some display tables, a stage where an installation later occurred, and Drew putting the finishing touches on a pedestal. One of our crates, this was for a rolled tapestry. Very basic crates for paintings, not my paintings, and a family of crates. Recently, also, I received some almost anonymous images of some not so great packing. This one is a complete disaster. Although all these pieces were wrapped in a very nice green bubble wrap, they were stacked on top of one another, and the space on top of them was not filled out, so they were free to move around the box. And if I understand correctly, they were almost all destroyed. So don't do that. The other one, Mike referenced earlier, I think this was dropped off the back of a truck. It also illustrates another failing, I think, for packing peanuts, which is when your box is torn or punctured and you begin losing your peanuts, your piece becomes less and less secure. I've often seen this on the street in New York, the peanuts, that is. Another thing you can't really prepare for are the forklift punctures. And really a wooden crate isn't going to prepare you for that either. But it's just something that happens. And something that happens surprisingly frequently. And then this one, obviously the box was just not chosen wisely. It's a little small for what he's doing there. But so now I'm going to run you through just a variety of crates that we've built and give you some of the thought process behind it. The first one here is for several panes of glass which ride upright. There's a foam core divider between each one, and I think they are also all wrapped in Tyvek. But everything in the crate is surrounded by 2 inches of ethafoam. We use a white ethafoam. It's actually the exact same thing that Mike was using. That's black for wherever he gets it. And then it's capped with 2 inches of ethafoam on top. So the pieces are secured, and then they are also protected from vibrations all around. Another type of crate, this one is actually pretty straightforward. It is for small bronze work that gets bolted to the tray, and then the tray can slide back into the crate. It sits on 2 inches of foam again. There's plenty of space around the piece inside of the crate, and then it also is held in place by the hold downs that you see there, and also once the lid is installed. And then this is a larger version in action with a piece that weighs a lot more. This actually required a gantry to move as well. But it's a pretty simple structure. Not so simple. This reclining figure was almost solid plaster and weighed hundreds of pounds, I really couldn't tell you, and it was about 8 feet long. So it lies in a crate the way that it is installed, lying down. The crate actually is explodable, so the piece lies on the bottom, and then the crate sides come up once it's laying in place. And then many braces are put over the piece to help keep it from cracking under its own weight. And then a grid work was put in with the styrofoam, which I'm sure some of you have used and have seen before, insulation foam. But anywhere it comes in contact with the plaster, it actually has Tyvek, as do the cross pieces, because the foam will actually polish the plaster. So the Tyvek is a non-abrasive surface. A soft Tyvek is a non-abrasive surface, and that's the only thing that comes in contact with this piece. Of the what?
Tyvek.
Tyvek. I'll come back to it. Yeah, there's another point where it's even more relevant. This was a pretty simple crate for an architectural model. The model is actually nested in the ethafoam, and then two braces, which go to either side of the actual building part of the model, hold it down, and then it has a lid for the top. But it's pretty straightforward. Not so straightforward is this basically piece of furniture that we had to build for a series of framed, hinged charcoal drawings that the museum required travel facing upright. So we built actually 2 levels of shelves, a slot for every single piece, which then you can slide the piece in and out. And then the entire thing is encased in actually even more than 2 inches of foam in this case, because I think the pieces were framed with glass. So then also they were all encased within their own shelves with foam core. And that took forever to build. Another process which actually Mike and I both thought would be very relevant to ceramic artists is cavity packing. This termite mound has a very fragile surface, and you'll see it's sitting on the Tyvek. I'm getting ready to wrap it. It gets wrapped in archival Tyvek, and there's the information about that, which is a non-abrasive, or for the most part, non-abrasive substance that can be used to wrap fragile surfaces. So it's wrapped, and then a crate is built. I then have this is a closed cell foam. The gray foam.
No, it's
No, this is different. This is more spongy. It's a softer foam. Yeah, open cell. So what I have is I have layers of foam that fill the entire void of that crate. And then I've cut them in half with a front half and a back half. And then placing the piece inside of the crate and measuring every single layer and trying to make it as accurate as possible, I'm creating a negative space for the sculpture. And a bandsaw will help speed that process up a little bit, but there's still a lot of fine-tuning that had to happen with the utility knife. It took a very long time. So then the piece is inserted into that back negative space. And there, you'll notice there's actually multiple shapes here. There's actually a whole series of termite mounds, just to make it even harder. So it's inserted into that space, and the back foam is glued into place. So that stays in the crate. And then I start on the front half and do the same thing and measure out from the piece in the dimension of the crate, glue it all together so that you can remove the front part. And there's your front part. So then that keeps the piece from moving. It's also, the gray foam is an even better foam as far as the vibration is concerned. It's particularly good for moving glass or glass work. But in this case, it was honestly a little unnecessary. But it was asked that we pack it this way by the gallery, and that's what we did. Just a few other examples of types of crates. This is a similar crate to some of the others, but it's for multiple boxes. T-frames or travel frames are about the most basic type of crate. They are used for short distance travel usually. And they don't cover the piece entirely unless you wrap it in plastic, which is what we usually end up doing. But it's much quicker to build than a crate that's that size. And then this is my own crate that I saved from being trashed. It's actually a cardboard crate that's reinforced with wood, and I've used it to change apartments in New York many times for my own work. And it's held up really well. It's kind of cute. And then the highlight of my winter was actually just the sunsets from our workshop window. It's been a long winter.
Am I there? I am. Hi, everybody. There we go. So, yeah. So these two super professional packers have told you all the ways to keep your stuff, allegedly, yeah, to keep it all safe. And I guess I'm going to talk a lot more about like the professional ramifications of packing, like the conversation between the gallery and the artist that happens through your boxes, and show you some things, well, some other ways that like aren't necessarily Noah and Mike approved, but so affordable. And affordable, yeah. So from 2010 to 2014, I was the curator of exhibitions at Red Lodge Clay Center. Prior to that, I ran a gallery at a community college for about 7 years. And I'm sad to report that in my 7 years at the community college gallery, I did not experience the quantity of breakage that I experienced in my first year at Red Lodge Clay Center. I know we work in a fragile medium, but I also think we're all learning on the fly about how to pack it. Some ceramic artists are either through trial and error or just innate ability, very good at packing their work for shipping and handling, but unfortunately, most of us are not. There's a scene, when Mike was talking to me about this came to mind. This is a scene from a 1985 film, Out of Africa. Everybody over 40, hello. So it goes something like this. Dennis, who's played by Robert Redford, he stops a train in Africa to load some ivory from his recent safari. And his men are loading the pieces of heavy ivory into a boxcar. It happens to be the same boxcar carrying Karen Blixen, played by Meryl Streep, her Limoges china. And it causes her to run out of her berth in her nightgown, modesty be damned, and she shouts, "Shoo, shoo!" And Robert Redford says, "Shoo?" And as the Maasai Bushmen are walking all over her crates, she cries, "Oh, that's all my crystal, my Limoges." And he's like, "Oh, well, they didn't know it was Limoges." And he pushes them, tells them to like get down. And then when she lands in Johannesburg, she's talking to her man Farah, seen here, and she talks to him in that condescending way that, like, you know, occupying countries can when they're strangers in strange lands, and says, "You know, that's all my china. Do you know China?" And he looks at her with his patient wisdom and says, "Yes, it can break." And that's exactly where it is. Once we let go of our wares and entrust the U.S. Postal System, UPX, FedEx, or any freight company, we have zero control over what gets dropped on them, how the packages are moved from point to point, or how they're stacked. All that we have to rely upon is the job that we did while we were putting them in the box. So when Mike presented the idea of this panel to me, it seemed like a great opportunity, like all of these things that happen coming, "Oh, I remember when I got that box, and that person, good God." And, you know, you quickly realize that the ceramics world is just like really, it's too small, we're too polite, and we are too interdependent to call people out specifically. So, and everybody makes mistakes. I certainly have learned on the job. But what I can tell you is that breakage is rarely the fault of the handler alone. So as a sidebar, you know who you are. Ceramic artists are notoriously bad about pushing up against the deadline, right? And I'm included in that camp. But when tardiness and slapdash packing are combined, any hope for preserving a professional image and for your brand goes out the window. So imagine the gallery receives your work at the last minute and it's broken because you didn't pack it well enough. And we have a gallery floor plan in place. We've have the negative space. Everybody else is waiting, dependent upon your pot to go there so it can talk to that pot. And then we're like, well, that's not going to happen anymore. So we scramble to put everything, rearrange it and fix it. So you got to trust me when I tell you, if you put a gallery in this situation, your name will move to the very bottom of the list the next time they're thinking about who to include in an exhibition. I know that it's easy and it's popular, and things do happen with carriers, but we need to think about our packing in the same way that we think about seatbelts. So a seatbelt is meant to hold our body in the passenger area upon impact so that we don't slam into an object that's harder than we are, but it also has enough give so that our rigid bits can move to absorb the shock, right? That's like, if you can think about your pots in a box in this way, they're going to be a lot safer. Let's see. The other thing you can think about are high school egg drop experiments. And trust me that it is absolutely possible to drop a fragile thing from a great distance with great force and have it survive. It is our responsibility as the makers and the caretakers of these objects to ensure safe passage regardless of the day that our carrier is having. So about 85% of my experience comes from handling pots, and that's where I'm going to focus my how-to advice. Unlike Mike and Noah, but perhaps like many of you, I don't have official training. It's all experiential on-the-fly training. But like Mike and Noah, I've tried to get better as I move along and improve the process. What I can tell you is I'd like for us to keep this in mind as we go forward, that we can agree that unpacking and packing is often the longest and most intimate conversation that artists and gallerists have, at least in the beginning when you're first getting your work into a gallery. You can tell a lot by how a person operates professionally from their box. And assumptions are made, trust me. So the box we're looking at here is from a packing demo offered out by Out of the Fire Studio in Alberta, Canada. And I've not specifically dealt with Out of the Fire, but I have dealt with artists who pack this way. And at the end of the day, the outside of this box says this is a serious professional and that they expect to be treated with all the care and consideration that the gallery can muster. So to achieve such professionalism, you just have to maintain a shipping supply inventory, especially because you're probably going to be up against that deadline and the supply store is not going to be open at midnight when you're finally getting the work packed. But I'd also like to acknowledge here that the economics of maintaining an inventory are a very real thing. So if you're shipping $65 mugs, $75 plates, even a $300 vase, it might not make good fiscal sense for all the packing material to cost more than the work in the box. So if you want to remember the idea of the passenger area in your car and the seatbelt's job while we look at these images, that'll be a good thing. So corrugated cardboard is what is used in this case to make the form modular and to unify it. It turns everything into these tiny little bricks. If you're things you could do to make this situation more archival would be to wrap clean newsprint around the pot so that the surface is safe and possibly put a layer of foam around it. Then you've got a really well insulated brick and they stack together really well. You can also shrink wrap the pieces together so that 3 mugs become one object so they move together instead of smacking against each other. Shrink wrap is really preferable to packing tape most of the time. You can see it and you can cut it off easily. It doesn't render your packing material unusable. And if you can't afford a shiny new roll of corrugated cardboard, what I bet that all of you have are a bunch of empty boxes that clay came in. And I bet that most of you have a box cutter, and I bet that most of you can cut a really nice rectangle out of that cardboard box. So you can make your own supply of these things. Sequoia Miller uses this process, and it was a breeze to unpack. And it didn't make a mess at all, and all of the materials were still safe and preserved. Now the interior of the box, to restate what these gentlemen have touched on about the void filler, this is just the interior box, doesn't show the exterior box, but you have to have a perimeter between the object that you're shipping and the outside of the box. And I know there are many, many awful stories about trying to get reimbursed from a shipping company, but I have won several awards back from UPS while I was working at Red Lodge Clay Center, but only because that perimeter was there. If you don't have the perimeter around the work, they're not even going to listen to you because it's your fault, not theirs. So keep that in mind. Let's see. So this is absolutely, absolutely true. And some of the ways that I know it's true are as follows. We don't know how many pieces to expect in the box unless there is an inventory list. And I can't tell you how many times me or residents at Red Lodge Clay Center have had to dig through. We keep a box of recycled peanuts. It's a 6 by 6 cubic foot box, and finding a ceramic lid in that box is not a good time. Usually like 4 of us have to go through it. So if we know like, okay, I've gotten 5 pots out of the box and there's still a lid, like we're not going to just like send the rest of the material to the recycling room. The other like if your lidded jar doesn't have a flange on the lip and the lip is packed separately, we won't know it's a lidded jar. If it's a multi-part sculpture, we won't know how many parts we should be looking for. You can hide things in the box really easily from the gallery that you're sending it to, you know? So an image-based inventory list is most desirable, but I'll tell you my favorite work by far to unpack, assemble, and repack was sent by Mary Wright. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you, but I'm hoping you'll get the idea that when we received the box, there was a picture on top, there were clear instructions for how to open the box, and then when we opened the box, there was a manila envelope with instructions at the very top of the package. And it told us how she wanted the work handled, that she wanted us to use white gloves. It told us what was visually significant about the work to her. She gave detail shots and point-by-point instructions for assembling the work. She even included illustrated directions on safely repacking the work and helping us remember how the puzzle went back together. It was easy, it was efficient, and it involved zero stress for our crew. And I would work with Mary again any day. I would also recommend her for any opportunity that I could. The work itself is great, and she was the consummate professional in every single part of the interaction. So, thinking about causing the crew zero stress. Here is the crew that I was working with in my life as working in a gallery. I don't know if you ever think about who the art handlers are at the other end of the line. I mean, it's awesome if you are getting museum shows or you're working with blue chip galleries and you have people who have like certified professional training, but often you're dealing with people who are just like you or people who are less experienced than you are, and they're working on this learning crew. So in the largest picture, the group shot, those are my students from the community college, and then the other shots are like various residents from Red Lodge Clay Center. And you don't know like where you are on somebody's learning curve, you know? And I have to tell you, part of my learning curve was understanding that just because somebody graduates with an MFA in ceramics, it doesn't mean that they know more about, I made assumptions that the residents knew exactly what was going on. So I want you to think about how much training you received in school on packing. I imagine that it was little to none, even though that's changing. And it was a hard lesson that I had to learn. So, here we go. Yeah. Tampa. It was like not good. It was my first NCECA with Red Lodge Clay Center, and we shipped work at that point. We shipped about 50 double-walled corrugated boxes. Back home in Montana, I had written instructions on the walls of our packing room for the residents, and I did a quick demo with them. But I was also operating under the assumption that, like, they get this. They're all ceramic artists. They know what's happening. We showed up to Tampa with over $2,000 worth of damage to the work that we were going to sell at the expo. I mean, you guys have been up there in the expo hall. You know how many pots are moving around. That's like a big chunk of change, and we have to pay the artists for every one of them, and the gallery doesn't get anything from it. So that was a huge hit. And the largest culprit was what you see in the upper corner there, was putting bubble wrap, just one sheet of bubble wrap between nesting forms, and so then they just clang together. And the other thing that happens, and Mike, I don't know if you've, like, at altitude, but the bubble wrap deflates when it goes down. So Red Lodge is at 5,500 feet. Tampa is not. And so that was a big learning curve for everybody. So from the following year, we constructed these crates, which you can see the fearless leader of Red Lodge Clay Center here, in all his sexiness. And we didn't have any more breakage until last year. One of the crates showed up with a side sheared off, but we lost 5 pots. And in 3 years, to go from that kind of loss to 5 pots was a really big learning curve. And I'm sure those are going to get upgraded again in Kansas City. So back to the professionalism. A gallery works to put your objects in front of as many relevant clients as it possibly can in order to secure a sale for you and in order to promote fine crafts in homes across the region, country, or the world, depending on their reach. But they need some help from you to do the best that they can. When you have an invitation, get your work to them in a timely manner. Many galleries now have digital newsletters or social media accounts that they're using as promotional tools, and they don't want to inundate their clients any more than our digital age already does, so they have a schedule for posts. If you miss the deadline because of breakage or because you're late, you miss a promotional cycle. And then your work, well, if it broke, your work is gone. But if you were just late, then your work sits around basically dead on the site for a month until the next promotional cycle happens. Also including easy to find and easy to interpret inventory lists, it streamlines the check-in process and serves to continue fostering the air of professionalism. When you treat the gallery as a professional, the gallery handles your work professionally, and packing material, it's one of the largest costs that a gallery incurs. So I wanted to give you a little behind-the-scenes peek because galleries do recycle the packing material, but when Red Lodge Clay Center sells to a customer, a new customer online or a collector, then we use brand new packing material, brand new boxes, brand new bubble wrap. It was all beautiful. So that when people pay $75 for a mug or $500 for a wood fire basket, presentation is important. Even the cardboard box should communicate that the contents of the package are worthy of their respect and careful handling and their hard-earned money. What we save the used packaging for is shipping work to another gallery or shipping the work back to the artist. And if we can save a little bit on that line item in the budget, that could be put back towards promoting the work of the artist that we represented. So we're going to look at one final artist here. When receiving the work of a production potter, the pots can start to blur together. So if you're sending your work to a gallery that's just brick and mortar, maybe that's okay. You can say all the cups are $50 and be done with it. But more and more galleries have an online presence and document the work for a digital storefront. Everybody has their own system for keeping things straight, and artists can help by putting the ID tags inside of things the way Ernest has done here. I want you to imagine if those ID tags weren't in there and I'm reading an inventory list without any pictures and it says, textured, you know me, $45. Patterned, you know me, $50. Okay, I wanted to do a puzzle today. Yes? Yeah, it's tape. It's tape that's in there. And it's not, you know what, and tape is not like the best thing to put on the surface of your pot. If it was going to be there for a long time, it could etch the surface, or it can make it gummy and destroy it. Yeah, it would be better if there was just a photograph of an inventory list, but it's not on there long enough to get, he lives in Utah, so Utah to Montana, he probably wasn't having any archival trouble with that, So, and he did fold it over so it was super easy to get out, okay? So, the pictured list. It helps with labeling. Oh, the other thing that happens is if we mix it up and there's an online gallery, more than once at Red Lodge Clay Center, we've been talking to a client on the phone and we think we've gotten, say the second red you know me there in the back row. I'm describing that cup to you, but you're looking at the red you know me on the other side of it, and I'm telling you, you're really interested in all this stuff, and I'm describing some special flashing that's happening, and you're looking at another one online. I mean, things can get really confusing, and people get angry. It's a lost sale. It costs the gallery money because we have to pay for return shipping. It's embarrassing. It makes everybody look bad. So it's this idea of an inventory list that has images and keeps things straight from the get-go is really an important part of the packing process that I wanted to hit on. So, bubble wrap here, this is what Ernie uses, bubble wrap, and he also does the same thing that happened with the corrugated cardboard, that it unifies the form, makes it modular, easy to pack inside the box for bricks. But when Ernie sent me his first package, he called me up, and he was really apologetic, and he was in a little bit of a panic. The box hadn't gotten there yet, and I didn't know what the problem was, and he's like, I'm sorry. And this is what he was talking about was wrap rage, because he hadn't used any shrink wrap. He used packing tape, and he totally encased those things. So there was no getting it out of the bubble wrap without ruining the bubble wrap. You have to cut through everything, and you can potentially scratch the pot. And wrap rage is I didn't know it was a thing until I was getting ready for this panel, but it's a Wikipedia entry, so it's a thing. you know? And usually it's reserved for blister packaging. But why he sort of snapped to it when his box was mid-shipment, he had read this excerpt from Julia Galloway's Field Guide. It's an article that was written by Mary Clunan and Lee Taylor Mickelson, and it talks about wrap rage and how at the end of a day, well, this is the snippet that I really liked. We can't tell you how irritating it is to come across a box brimming with bubble-wrapped objects that have been mummified with clear tape. Such a sight can literally bring tears to our eyes after a long day of unpacking. And what ensues is an emotionally filled battle with mostly a dull mat knife and the unforgiving layers of clear packing tape. So I would tell any of you, for another reference, Julia Galloway's Field Guide is an amazing collection of essays from professionals in the field, and you should definitely look it up. The other thing, when I'm talking about like preserving and recycling, this is what's happening with packing materials. 76 million tons of waste is what's going on. So the other thing is, this is like the interior of the box. It has the same void filler, and it is nice once in a while. See the little red heart? That's sweet. I'll tell you, Jeff A. Strike sends chocolate with his packages. I'm just saying. So everybody hates peanuts, but we do have them out there, and this is why we hate them, because like they shake down in the box, so they're not doing their job anymore. They make a huge mess. But if you're going to use them, you can use them in this way. Like Chris Golden, she puts them in bags all the time so that they're enclosed. They like continue to do their job. They don't make a huge mess, and you can also use environmentally friendly peanuts. So my final horror story is a reenactment, and this happens. I have received boxes that were full of a smoky pillow, that was a sleeping bag, that was one was like a blue tub that was full of loose newspaper and was duct taped together, and none of those pieces showed up intact. So just remember that it doesn't matter. Like, this shouldn't be a relevant factor. And if you don't bring some professionalism and safety to your boxes, you're not going to be asked to play again. And it's a representation of your brand and the only interaction or conversation, if you will, that you might have with your gallery. So I just want to end with this by Neil Gaiman. It was, you help the gallery help you by putting your best foot forward for the field when you operate professionally on all levels. This is from a commencement address that Gaiman gave graduating artists. You will get work or exhibitions if your work is good, if you're easy to deal with, and if you meet deadlines. And it's worth noting that all of these are dependent upon your work showing up in one piece. So, thank you.
Firstly, I want to say thank you to NCECA for getting me these two wonderful fellow professionals. I might be the one who's a little quasi, but that's okay. And we are going to open up for as many questions as we can until they kick us out. So if you need specific questions, you come up and approach us, and we'll go from there, because there's probably a few questions lurking.
If we give you our card, would you send us information,
Yes.
written
Yes.
information?
If you have a card or you want me to give your email, I will send a PDF file for my studio company of the kind of, it's a summary of everything I talked about and then primary points. So if you have that, you can set it up here. And if any other questions, any of us are available after this too to ask questions.
If you're going
Yes.
to ship something overseas, would a cardboard box ever be a good idea, or would you always crate it?
Great question.
I'll take this. I actually got a contract to close a gallery out in Aspen who's the owner's retiring. It's glass, and we're talking Chihuly, Lino, the really high ends, really low ends. I have to be forced to ship internationally with UPS because that's what the gallery owner demands, because it's price. You can. What I'm going to tell you to do is you can go out and get like the foam rubber insulation tubing for piping. It isn't as good as what we use. If you can't find what we use, please don't go recycle. If you live in a college town, brown couches that have been set on the front porch of frats. That's moldy, nasty foam. It's the wrong type of foam. It's too soft. Or, like I said, overpack. If you have to send something to, especially to Japan, we just found out recently, crates have to be all HT stamped, which I'm not going to go into what the heat treating stamp deals with, but every piece has to be stamped. So if you do cardboard, you're not worried about that if it's a lightweight piece. But let's say the piece is there, make sure you have 4 to 5 inches around it on the internal box, snug it in, like I say, white foam, bubble, big bubble. That's how I pack all the glass artwork, because that's the materials they give me at the gallery to pack with when I'm contracted. Then put it in the outer box. I have a minimum of 3 inches. Whatever material you're using, 3 inches. If you're really worried, go 4 or 5. It's better to pay a little extra for volumetric, because it's all going to go air freight. And that's what UPS is doing. You're paying an air freight charge. And like Jill and Noah and I have said, you want to get your claim. And the way I pack $20,000, $30,000 chunks of glass that are hyper delicate is I overpack them to make sure UPS, Patrick Starr can have his way. You know, you saw it. You don't know who you're going to get to handle these. You don't know what their mental attitude is. So just think of that way. If you do a wood crate and you don't have the skills like me and Noah or access to a wood shop, go to a professional and pay for it done right. Inform them there needs to be HT stamps on any piece of solid wood. Going to Asia, we just recently found out you have to have HT stamp on every piece of wood. So it's getting strict, but it might be worth you getting a mega show somewhere. Get the outer crate made, because when it goes, it might go to a museum because they might buy it. You never know where these pieces are going. And there's an article recently on Art News last year that dealt with this, was what's art going to be valued in 100 years. And this is like the business, the wonderful lecture yesterday on business of art. This is part of your business. So, you know, you want your piece to be valued and last. I hope that answers that. Okay, next, please.
Which shipping companies allow crates and are crate friendly, I guess? And do galleries and museums recycle the same crate for the piece if it's like custom?
Do you want me or Jill? I mean, I think Jill and I both will answer this, so you go first, Jill.
I would say, let's see, yes to the, like if a box comes and there's like foam cut specifically to it and it's a wooden crate, yeah, I mean, there's the obviousness that like the artist has invested in that, and you absolutely, boy, you better send that box back to them. And then, but I will say you need to like with a gallery, you need to check on like what's their, do they have a loading dock? Are they going to need a loading dock? Do they need to work out to have a forklift that day? You need to know, what does a regular gallery have available, you know, to them? You need to make sure you know what's on the other line, end of the line. So
yeah, for me, I mean, the gallery I'm closing out is Pismo Fine Arts Glass. It's Denver, Vale, Aspen, and it's all the Chihuly glass to any other glass. She makes me recycle everything because she was an accountant and consultant. She's a businesswoman. She wants every dollar she can scrap by. So if we have something and I deem it, or her full-time packer, because I'm part-time when they need me, because I'm a lot more expensive. I mean, Noah and I bill out at very high dollar per hour rates. And we will use it, but I'll tell her if it's good or not. If it's not, we toss it. A lot of the crates come in too beat up to use, because if they're made too thin, they're just going to fall apart in a couple shipments. So if you can find a good quality box, make sure you would be happy stuffing yourself in it and shipping. I mean, that's a good gauge. I mean, if you put your kid in and ship them, or you put yourself in there, you'd be fine getting in it. You'll probably be fine, but just make sure it's beat up. Like you saw, I have battens. We have battens on the corners. That is a reinforcement gauge. So if you get a nice wood box and it was just kind of slapped together and butt jointed, you can go and cut 4-inch battens out of plywood or whiteboard it if you don't have and you can only cross-cut saw it. I mean, most schools or places have shops, or you have friends who have a wood shop, and you can screw them. I use screws specifically because I had the staple method, which is kind of more industry standard, fail on me on some crates. So I use the wood screws and glue, but you know, it's my preference for my crating. You can do that to reinforce a box. I mean, that answers that. Okay.
So I haven't had as much bad luck shipping items, but my problem is always getting things returned to me from the gallery if it didn't sell. I've had multiple pieces break on returning, and then I have to deal with the gallery themselves. So what
Jill,
kind of
I think
advice do you
that's
have there?
up your alley.
true story. I know, Kaylee, it happens. Yeah. I guess part of it is I would want to know, like, I feel like right now I suddenly go, I feel like I'm going to sound like I'm victim blaming. I'm not meaning to, because like the gallery has a responsibility, and I hope you got paid for your pieces.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. But the other part is like, what were the instructions that you included on how to repack? Like, how easy did you make it for the idiot on the other end to put it back together the way you put it together?
Yeah,
You know?
I think that's kind of what I took away from it.
Yeah.
Was like, I didn't idiot-proof it enough on repacking.
Yeah,
'cause
they will
my-
build a better idiot, Kaylee. So, yeah. But if you can, like, if you really can, like, think about it all the way through, that it's not just your responsibility to get it to them, but it's also your responsibility to get it back. And then, you make it easy. Like with Mary, did you see those pictures? Like, it was,
Yeah, I think that the pictures are really what changes it, because just
Yeah.
words, people don't read all the
and
words.
ideally, people would be, when it was unpacked and it was complicated, the gallery would be photographing the situation so that they could recreate it. But then if it's a big group show or something and there's a lot of work coming in, the reality is there time to do it, or so do you just like take care of yourself and make sure that you've got that information there for them, and then you can really, really be indignant when they mess it up. Yeah.
Fair. All right, thank you.
And simplify your instructions as much as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I use the foam in place bags from Uline because I have animals. You haven't talked about anything like that at all.
About what are they? They're
Speak of the mic, I couldn't hear you, please.
Foam in place. They're
Foam in
bags, They're bags. You have 2 chemicals.
Oh, yeah. Well, you wanted to talk
I've dealt
about
with
that.
this. I've dealt with this. Okay, at the glass gallery, she's talking about the expansion foam process, which is, it's a 2-part chemical that expands into a foam product, which is a high impact dampener. So it's literally, it's like the styrofoam in your helmets of your bikes. That's the type of impact it's going to take. I deal with a glass artist named John Lewis, who's in the presidential collection, who does optics crystal glass. We're talking chunks the size of this, weigh 60 pounds, a perfectly crystallized glass. I personally will stay away from that for a technical reason. Not that it doesn't do a really good job. If you're chipping something extremely dense, maybe a good size or weird size, it's okay, but the problem is the stuff dries out. In Colorado at high altitude, especially at high altitude where we dry out even faster in deserts, we have a problem where an artist will ship it in and it's really nice and the piece might be in a nice plastic bag to keep it clean from any bits, but that stuff stays there in the galleries. And I'll come back 2 months later because they call me up to pack some stuff and it's crumbling or it's been broken by someone else pulling it apart. Maybe it didn't come apart well enough. It's hard to fix that because once that foam gets broken after it's set, it's not going to be able to be easy put back. If it's one shipment to a client, let's say you do giant basins for sinks or something like animals, that's okay. Just really, I would recommend be careful that it doesn't suck around your forms and lock them into place because that can damage. I've had glass pieces come to me in the gallery specifically like this, and they have been heavily damaged just trying to get the stuff out, and we were videotaping the whole thing because I was not happy. This is when I worked for the gallery full-time before I had my own company. Sometimes it's hard to pull those pieces apart. That's the only thing I have to say. That stuff can be good between the inner and outer box, though. If you have it and you want the high impact dampening, you can pack with a bubble to safely wrap your piece and then use that between the inner and outer box because then it's obvious how that inner and outer box go together. So I just stay away from it because it crumbles after time. Nope.
Last question.
Oh, yeah. Okay, last question.
No, that was
Oh, that was the last one? Okay, we'll take care of you outside.
we can talk to her.
We'll talk to you outside, miss. So thank you very much for coming. We appreciate you. Thank you. Okay, kicking us out.